Hi, I'm Sarah, and this is my channel, So Sarah Sewed. In today's video, I'll be sharing everything I made in July and talking about my upcoming plans. I don't have very many things to show you that I finished in July because most of my projects in July were really big projects. But I did make this patina blouse that I'm wearing right now. This is a pattern by the Friday Pattern Company, and it comes in a couple of different views, short sleeved or long sleeved, and then there are two different neckline options. One is a deeper V and one is the standard V neckline. So I have made the long sleeve version and I've made the standard V neckline. And I've made mine in this beautiful viscose by Lady McElroy in the Cobra Corsage design. I absolutely love this fabric. I actually bought it months ago, thinking that I'd use it to make myself a birthday shirt, just something to mark my birthday, but that was back in April and I only just got around to making it in July. I've actually never worn this before. Today's the first time I'm wearing it, took some photos, and I have to say, I'm a little bit disappointed. And the main reason is the fit. I've made a few different patterns by Friday Pattern Company, and the sizing I often find isn't consistent with my body measurements. So for example, I measure somewhere between a size large and extra large for my bust, and I have made in the past size large and size extra large in items. The Hughes dress I made in a size large and it was far too tight across the bust. I made again in an extra large and I still found that was quite snug across the bust. This patina blouse I made in a size large, but I just feel like it's way too big for me, unfortunately. You can see where the shoulders sit right off my shoulders here, but also at the back, it just hangs so low. I just feel like it's a little bit too oversized and that I perhaps should have made a medium in this fabric because it's so drapey. I've made this shirt before, but I made the short sleeve version and I made that in a crisp sort of linen cotton. And I don't have the same feeling of it being so big on me. So I'm not really sure how often I'll get to wear this. I think the other thing for me will also be trying to style it in a way that doesn't feel like it's aging me. I think from a distance, this design can look, I think from a distance, you don't really get an idea of how cool this print is. You sort of see the big flowers, but it's not until you get much closer that you see the beetles and the snakes and things like that. And I feel like it would be quite easy to style this in a way that would make me look a little bit frumpy, especially with the fact that I feel like it's a bit too big on me. So I'm going to try wearing it in a few different ways. I've got a couple of pinafores that I might try wearing it with. For me, I've gone with the standard neckline and it's definitely not workplace appropriate for me. It looks okay like this, but it just completely gapes open the moment I move. And being a teacher, I wouldn't feel comfortable wearing this at work ever, unless I was layering it under, for example, a pinafore, which I do have a few of. So I might give that a go. I'll put in some pictures so you can see, because I feel like this looks better when you can see the sleeve. The sleeve is probably my favorite part. I love how billowing it is. I had some comments on my plans video saying that some people had found the sleeves too short. I haven't found that, and maybe it's contributed to, and maybe the fact that my sleeve starts here has contributed to the fact that my sleeves definitely aren't too short. And then I moved my button quite far in along the cuff so that I would get this sort of billowing effect over the cuff. So I think that looks really cool. In terms of sewing up this pattern, I find the instructions pretty easy to follow. There is also a sew along video on the Friday Pattern Company YouTube page, which I looked at for a couple of the steps. Sometimes I found the instructions to be a little bit vague, and the one that comes to mind is the placement of the buttons and the buttonhole on the cuff. Now for me, as someone who hasn't made a whole lot of cuffed shirts, it's not intuitive which side the hole and which side the button goes, for example. And that was something I had to really look carefully at. to figure out which side it goes, because it never mentioned or put on the pattern pieces where to put the button and where to put the buttonhole. I think for me also the burrito method, where you do the yoke in the bodice, I absolutely needed the video to be able to understand the instructions on that bit as well. So having that combination of the written instructions and the video meant that I was able to put this together successfully, but I don't think I could have done it with just one or the other. I think possibly another reason why I'm wondering how I'm going to style this top is the fact that it is quite lightweight, but it's also these kind of rich and dark colors. So figuring out what sort of season to be wearing it in, because so far it's been too cold to wear it, but it does feel like the right sort of colors to be wearing at the moment. And I guess when I made it, I sort of thought that I would be wearing it sort of to nice dinners, like with jeans or whatever. And that's probably what I will do. So we'll see. We'll see how much this ends up getting worn and whether I find a way that makes me feel really good and comfortable in it. This is actually the only garment I got sewn up in July because I was working on two very large projects of quilting. The first one I don't actually have to show you because I've just given it to my friend this week, but this was the Journey Home quilt by Blooming Poppies. I started this in a quilt along in, I think, July 2020 and just finished it in July 2024. So that was quite an achievement, it felt like. Now, back in July 2020, when I was doing quilts, I would make my own templates according to the pattern's design and then sew everything by hand. So this was a very long, slow project. My idea was that I would try and make one block a month, and that kind of worked until I lost the final pieces for the last block. So it took me ages, like months, to find that final block. So I think it was a little over a year ago that I completed the actual quilt top, all by hand, of this quilt, but then it just sat in a drawer waiting to be quilted for the next year or so. And then when my friend had her baby, I thought that would be the perfect opportunity to make sure that this quilt was actually loved and used. The fabrics I used in this were quite playful. There are children in some of the pictures, and so I thought it would make a really perfect baby quilt. It's quite a large size, it's a throw size, so it should grow up with the little boy and hopefully get lots and lots of years of use. I really like this type of quilt because of the kind of kaleidoscope effect it ends up giving. When you're looking at certain sections of the quilt, you might see one thing, but then when you look at it from afar, your eyes see it in a completely different way, and I really love that effect. I was thinking about piecing my own backing together using scraps of all of the fabrics that I had left over for the quilt, but when I laid them out on the floor, there were so many of them and it would have taken so long, and there also just weren't enough scraps for it to work. So I ended up deciding to buy a flannelette sheet, which I then used to back this quilt. It was a blue and white gingham flannelette, and I think it looks absolutely perfect. And then I ended up using the scraps that I was going to back the quilt with to make a scrappy binding. For the quilting, I just decided to do some very, for the quilting, I just decided to follow some of the lines within the pattern just to stitch mainly in the ditch, and then in some of those blocks you see those lines cross over, and I really like that effect. So it felt really, really good to give this quilt to my friend when I visited her and her family the other day. They all absolutely loved it, and yeah, it's now out of my whip drawer and into the home of someone who will love it. I've also been working a lot in July on my standing tall quilt, which is actually sitting right here next to me. I won't be showing you because our reveal date is not until the 27th of August, but I have finished mine. I did my quilt top in July, and hopefully you've seen the reveal of that one either on Instagram or on Teresa's channel in our quilt top reveal video that we filmed in July. But that was a really, really big task and one that took up a lot of my time in July. But I'm excited to have that finished, and you'll get to see that at the end of August. Our reveal date for that one on Instagram is the 27th of August, and then Teresa and I will be filming a video to share our finished products shortly after that and sharing them here as well. So the other thing I was working on in July was my knitting project. I've been working on the Instant Crush Sweater by Joji Locatelli, and I have been absolutely loving it. I'm currently working on the bodice of this jumper. It's taking a long time. It's not a quick knit for me, although I've seen other people describe it as a quick knit. Definitely not for me. It's taken quite a bit of time to work on this one. So you can see the bodice is coming together. It needs to be, I think it's something like 10 inches, might be more. I think it's about 10 inches from this underarm seam to where I'm going to then start some ribbing. Looks like I've done about 5 inches, but I haven't measured it for a while. And yeah, so that's been my other project that's been taking up a lot of time in July. So most of my projects in July have been sort of long-term, large projects. And yeah, as I said, this is my only one that I started and finished in July. So my plans for the coming weeks. I actually last night spent some time cutting out my next 2 projects. If you watched my most recent video where I was unwrapping some parcels that had arrived, you will have heard about some of my plans. But the first thing I'm going to be making is an apron for my dad. I'm using the Sam apron by Helen's Closet, and I'm using this canvas, which is in a colorway called Sienna, and this is from My Design. So that's all cut out and ready to go. This is a free pattern by Helen's Closet. The instructions, I've had a look through them. They look incredible, very detailed, and lots of fun. So there are 2 different views for this. You can either have a halter neck or a crossover back. I'm going to do the crossover back. And what's really impressive about this pattern is just the number of sizes and the thought that's gone into different sizes. So there are a whole lot of different heights. There's a whole lot of different chest sizes. And then there are other ways to customize it with different pockets and things like that. So I'm looking forward to making my dad his own special apron. It's his birthday next Sunday. So I'll hopefully make that up this week. I'm not sure when I'm going to see him next to give it to him, but if I know it's made by his birthday, then the next time I see him, I'll be ready to give it to him. And the other thing I'm going to be making is a Bestie Bag by Blackbird Fabrics Patterns, or BF Patterns. And I've cut that one out too last night. I spent quite a bit of time on the floor cutting out while I watched Love is Blind UK on Netflix last night. It was perfect Saturday night, to be honest. So for this one, I'm also making I'm also using a fabric from My Design, also the same kind that I'm using for the apron. I think it's actually called a twill, a heavyweight twill, cotton drill, one or the other. And I'm using this blue, and then I'm also using a cotton block print to line it. So they're my colors for that one. So that should keep me busy this week. I've also got a busy week at work, a busy day today. I'm taking my children to a guitar sort of big workshop afternoon today, so I won't be home to do a lot of sewing today. But when I find some pockets of time during the week, I'll make a start on the apron and see how I go with that. I'm hoping to get back into my knitting this week as well. I've actually had a 2-week break. I've had quite a bit of pain under my arm, and this is something that's been going on and off for a few years. I saw my doctor about it, had ultrasounds and everything, which came back normal, and he thought it was likely to be the result of that repetitive motion of knitting, because it started just a couple of months after I took up knitting, and it seems to get worse when I have periods where I'm doing more knitting than usual. So a couple of weeks ago, I had a weekend where I would have knit for several hours a day, and that following Monday, it was probably the worst pain it had been for quite a while. So I decided to take 2 weeks off and see if it got any better. It's feeling much better today, especially. I'm feeling a big difference. So I am going to hopefully get back into the knitting, but just maybe set myself a limit for now, so that I don't aggravate it again. So we'll see how I go, but I would like to finish this jumper. I was hoping to finish it in August, but it's not looking likely anymore. If I'm going to put restrictions on myself, and with the time left in August, I'll keep you posted. So thank you so much for joining me today. And also thank you so much for all your lovely comments on my last video. I am planning to be back again soon with another video. I know I've got some fabric arriving this week, so I'm looking forward to sharing that with you soon. I hope you're having a lovely week and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.